There hasn't been a Final Destination movie for over a decade. It's one of, everything that's old is new again. Hollywood is still on this nostalgia kick, and it's going pretty well, so I don't see it ending anytime soon. And Final Destination's Bloodlines is another great entry. But anyway, back in the day when these movies came out, again, it's been over a decade, but there were a lot of them. When you saw them, and again, if they were done correctly, when you left the theater, you were afraid to move. Because like anything could set off a chain reaction. It was terrifying. And sure enough, Final Destination Bloodlines gets it right. Because when I walked out of this theater, I was afraid. We saw it at the Kips Bay IMAX, which is a baby IMAX, but it's a nice theater. They actually even were giving away little souvenirs. I was so freaked out. I was like, I don't want this. Like, you can keep it. I don't want any souvenirs from this movie. But then I had to cross 2nd Avenue. And as I walked across the street, there was like a bike coming toward me. And I was like, oh my God. Everything seems really surreal. You start to see everything around you and really freak out. That's when you know a Final Destination movie is firing on all cylinders. And this one is. I missed a good portion of the movie because I was too scared. I was looking down at the floor for a lot of it. I was like, I get the idea. I get the general idea. I know where you're going with this. When I hear the audience go, I'll look up again. And it's a good system. What's your system for watching scary movies if you're a bit of a wimp like myself? And what I did see of the movie, and I was able to see a decent amount, and I really liked what I saw. I had a good time. What's your history with the Final Destination franchise? Have you seen any? Did you see them back in the day when they came out? The first came out in 2000. Or have you recently just caught up? All of them, I think they're available on a number of streaming services, but one place that you can catch all of the films is, of course, on Max, because this is a Warner Brothers franchise. And speaking of Warner Brothers properties, the latest and bloodiest Mortal Kombat makes a cameo here as well. And I thought that was very fitting and appropriate. And if you don't know, if you're unaware, arguably, what is your favorite Final Destination kill in the franchise? But I believe the most famous one, the one that I think comes to mind first, is the one with the truck full of lumber. And that is teased several times during this movie. Watch out! Gotcha! While you regain your composure, why not click the like and subscribe button? For instance, if you subscribe, you'll know exactly when my spoiler review for this movie goes up. And I have something really fun planned that I think you're gonna enjoy. All right, so Final Destination back in the day was dreamed up by a writer named Jeffrey Riddick. And he's the creator. But the people who really shepherded the film franchise early on are Glenn Morgan and James Wong, who came from X-Files. So that's a pretty good pedigree. But you know who's resurrected it now? Jon Watts as an MCU Spider-Man. Jon Watts. He did his trilogy. Now he's forging his own path. And, I think this is quite the feather in his cap. He's a producer here as well as has story credit. And he's also, behind the recent Apple movie Wolves. He abandoned a potential sequel out of a show of protest because Apple reneged on the deal to release it in theaters first. Understandable. I understand why he did that. I have to say Wolves, if you haven't seen it, it's only on Apple TV, although I think next week they're going to release it finally for you to be able to purchase or rent just on digital. And you should. I mean, the ending, I didn't love the ending, but before the ending, it's a fantastic movie. It's really, really well done. Very, very funny. So how's Final Destination Bloodlines? Well, I think it's surprisingly strong. It's got really intricate, shocking, and creative kills. Perfect for a Final Destination franchise. A cast that you care about, but not too much, which is also important for a Final Destination franchise. Don't get attached. And a story that's actually engaging. Let's start with the kills, but don't worry, this is the non-spoiler review. The opening, which takes place at the fictional Skyview Restaurant back in the 1950s, is fantastic. It's like Mad Men meets a mini Titanic. Oh, it was so good. And it's not only very well thought out, but surprisingly funny. Final Destination is it's a comedic horror film. My audience reacted to this extended sequence big time. I mean, this was very drawn out, but like in a good way. So intricate, like we were on the edge of our seats. This movie had us, particularly for this opening sequence. And we all bonded over, well, again, I said this was no spoilers, but there was something that, let's just say, and you'll have the same experience when you watch the movie, that we all wanted to happen. The screenplay was setting us up to all put us in the same boat of wanting something to happen that's so wrong, but we wanted, you were like, you found yourself really rooting for it. And then when it did happen, not only did we all cheer, but then we laughed that all of us were cheering that something horrible had happened. Something so horrible had happened. I mean, it was great. The movie the movie hooked us and it had us and it led us exactly where it wanted to take us. So the brilliance of a Final Destination movie, the formula, is that not only is there the lead character who has the premonition that kicks things off for the film, but then can kind of see the way things are going to come together a little bit in advance to warn the other characters. But as that character sees what might happen, the audience, of course, sees it as well. So you're kind of like almost having the premonitions too. So the movie not only kind of signals you as to what is going to happen, but then here's where it adds even another great layer. For just a moment, they make the lead character and you think that maybe it's not going to happen after all, right? You're like, oh, maybe it's not going to. I mean, it always happens, but that's how they still manage to make you think for just a second, maybe it won't. And that's fantastic. And I think that this Final Destination understands the formula of the franchise particularly well. I mean, it just feels very, very sharp. There are several very clever twists throughout the film. Really, this is a surprisingly well-written film. And it just underscores, again, how important a good script is to movies. And Hollywood so often does not realize that. They're wondering why they're getting their butt kicked by the small screen, where writers are in control. On the big screen, directors are usually in control, and writers are, unless there's a writer-director, and then writers are, in charge on the small screen. And it's like, I think, I might be seeing a little bit of a difference here. But this is the rare current film that's very, very well written, particularly for something that's like the sixth entry in a franchise. I mean, this is something that has been around for so long and they've made so many of these movies that they can still manage to make it seem fresh is, again, really kudos to everybody involved here. I think that the 14-year gap does help. It's been a long break. And I think they changed the premise this time from a group of friends to a family, and the curse is following the bloodline. That's why it's called Final Destination's Bloodline, and it's following the bloodline in order of birth. And I think that's very clever, but it's also very sad, right? You're like, wow, I mean, that's sad, but it's a testament to the script and the actors that they still managed to make that concept fun. You're like, well, I gotta tell you, I laughed and had a good time. Speaking of making sad things bearable, Tony Todd makes his final appearance here. He's, of course, a horror movie icon, but through the course of his career, he did appear in many of the Final Destination movies. Now, I knew when he was coming up because I'd seen him in the trailer, and so I knew the set that the scene he was going to be in. So I was like, this is it. And I decided that when he came on screen, I was going to clap to get a round of applause going in the theater. But wow, the audience, this whole audience, we were synced up. And that's it's good to have a good audience, but the credit for that really belongs to the film itself. And that, again, it had everybody where it wanted to have us. And before I could even get a clap out, other people started clapping. And so I joined in, and it was really very beautiful to have the whole theater applauding Tony Todd. So I just want to tell you, though, hopefully your whole theater will applaud as well, but maybe you're going to have to be the one who gets it started. So be ready to clap when Tony Todd comes on screen. Todd is fantastic here, as he always is, but they really did a nice job. This was really, I think, a very fun, interesting, and respectful. It was just a great final appearance for him. R.I.P. Tony Todd. Of the main cast, you know who I would say is the MVP? This surprised me. I didn't expect to say this person was the best, but when you watch the film, undeniably, they're the star. And that's Richard Harmon. Oh, he's so funny. I mean, I think we've all seen him around over the years. He's like he seems like a discount David Dastmalchian, but I actually enjoyed him a little bit more here. I thought he really stepped into his own. I think he's been on some CW shows. I just kind of, to me, he's that guy, but some of you might be more familiar with his work. but he is so good here. I mean, it's a fantastically written role, to be fair, with some really great jokes. But somebody has to deliver those jokes, and he really steps up to the plate. He's fantastic. Whenever he's on screen, he gives the movie a huge boost. Really, MVP, for sure. Next, I'd have to go with Owen Patrick Joyner. He's adorable and also surprisingly funny. I thought he had some great comedic timing. His delivery was excellent. Then, Caitlin Santawana and Tio Briones, they make an excellent brother and sister combo. They really sold me on their bond as siblings. I thought that was very nice as well. And Breck Basinger, speaking of the CW, that's Stargirl. She helps to really set up that memorable extended sequence in the opening of the film. She was great. Obviously, there are a lot of red shirts in a Final Destination movie. This one in particular. Although I think there are always a lot of red shirts. But this one, I don't know. I think it was interesting to see a movie where an unusual amount of screen time and dialogue was given to actors who usually would not have that opportunity. And because, maybe sometimes maybe a movie with a bigger budget would have cast more well-known actors, but they were really using a lot of people here who, are let's just say not well-known. And I thought it really worked well. I mean, not everybody was a great actor, but that kind of added to the comedic element of the movie. That worked in the movie's favor. And I have to say that a number of these actors who were in these smaller roles for the brief time that they were on screen, they not only did a good job, but some of them really managed to stand out, through creative choices that they made. Some of them because they were really kind of crazy, maybe not such great creative. I don't know, they owned it though. They were all having such a good time being in the movie, and I think and they wanted to do a good job, and they wanted to give an 11 performance. And for them, it was an 11. And therefore, I think this movie is a good example of self-confidence, particularly from an acting standpoint. I would say that all of these actors, maybe even if some of them shouldn't usually have it, but they had a lot of self-confidence. And that really sold me on their performances and made it so much fun to watch. Everybody felt here, this is my screen time. I'm not going to waste it. And that made the movie even more fun to watch. The Final Destination franchise as a whole, but this entry in particular because it's such a good entry, it reminds me of some famous directing advice from the master of suspense himself, Alfred Hitchcock. So he famously said that sure, you could have a bomb go off under a table in a scene and it will shock the audience momentarily. However, if you tell the audience at the beginning of the scene that there's a bomb under the table that's set to go off, it does a couple of things. First of all, it creates, of course, a lot of suspense as you watch the scene, but it also adds an entirely new layer and meaning to the otherwise simple scene that is unfolding before you. And then, of course, it allows the audience to participate because they're not passively watching, but they're involved. They, in fact, know a secret that the characters on screen do not. And they want to reach into the screen and warn them. But of course they can't. And so I think that this franchise does that quite well, with the premonitions and kind of setting up the premise and having you look for things. It's just very, very clever. So it has that element. And then it layers on a supernatural element as well. And to the franchise's credit, it has resisted the temptation to personify the force of death. It could have created its own Michael Myers or Freddy Krueger or something like that, but it doesn't. And I think it really works. And I think that those elements, the particular way that it uses suspense and then it's more of a force of nature still, I think these help set the Final Destination franchise apart from other horror franchises. And as I said, the movie invites participation. So it really is a fantastic film, therefore, to see at theaters with an audience. And again, to this movie's credit, it does a fantastic job of putting everybody on the same page. So it really does become a communal experience. You feel like you're in good hands. However, speaking of being in an audience, and I don't know why this usually, for me, I tend to have it happen with going to see a horror film. Like when people are on their phones. Like when I went to see Until Dawn a few weeks ago, again, someone was on their phone. I mean, thankfully they turned the brightness all the way down, and I've just kind of come to accept it with horror movies. But it's still very frustrating. I was surprised to see it happening at a press screening. And I mean, there were fans there, but who was really on the phone? influencers. I told you that the studios are inviting more and more influencers to these early screenings, but an influencer doesn't care about the movie for the most part. I'm sure there are some wonderful influencers out there who do, but a lot of them just want to get the quote, the access, and the picture and the screen grab, and then otherwise they just couldn't care less about the film. I remember a couple of years ago, I went to see the IMAX early screening of Nope, and they did such a great job setting it up. It was amazing. And these two girls next to me had like an amazing seat. They were at the prime seats in the AMC Lincoln Square IMAX. They could not be less interested in the movie. They were on their phones like all the way beforehand. And then, I kid you not, they left like 15 minutes into the film. And it was crazy. I mean, it's like, why did you stay to watch any of it? Some of you, I thought Nope was a masterpiece. And how do you know? And if you don't stay to watch the entire thing? So I think that's one of the downsides of this development. But at this screening, in the press influencer row ahead of me, there was actually a woman who had a laptop open. It wasn't open all the way, but it was open just enough so that the screen was lit up. That's a new one. I've seen a lot of phones at screenings, but I've never seen someone's laptop open. I mean, luckily when I sat back, I couldn't see it. But I felt bad for the other people in that row. There were supposed to be security guards there. I mean, I guess as long as your phone was in point. I mean, how did they? I mean, I don't know what they were doing. It was an interesting experience, but I still had a good time. So bottom line, the kills, the cast, and the story are all surprisingly strong. Really good for a film that's so far into the franchise. And that's my non-spoiler review of Final Destination Bloodlines, hitting theaters this weekend. Share your thoughts down below. Again, subscribe today. And of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.